Hey, today is listener feedback day. Are you going to tear us a new one? Are you going to raise the roof with kudos and applause? Let's dive into the Adventure Journal podcast and see what you have to say. I am Stephen Casimiro. I am one half of your dynamic duo hosts. With me on the AJ podcast is Justin Hausman, beaming in from the place that he always reminds us is paradise, Marin County, California.
I do, I'm aware that probably every episode somehow that it comes up. I don't work for the Marin County Visitors Bureau or anything, but it is pretty nice. I really apologize if I'm selling it too much on the show.
Oh no, you're fine.
I'm just happy to be here.
Humble brag.
What can I say?
Brag. Yeah, no, that's fine. You love where you are. So whatever. I don't get it. I don't really understand why anybody would live in a small town where everybody knows your name. You can walk to the market and the theater. There's an epic single track out your back door, and you live in Redwoods and the ocean's not too far away. And then you have a major metropolitan city with awesome art and music, a stone's throw away. Why? What the hell? Why would anybody
and it's so affordable. Just so affordable. All those things, and all you need is $1 million to buy a one-bedroom apartment. It's great.
Yeah, it's great. So, welcome to everybody. We're making this up as we go along. We don't have a hard script for this, as if you can't tell. And so apparently do our readers, who are just like winging it and telling us what they think. I do want to lead off with a feedback with one comment from Zach in Sitka, Alaska, and I don't really know how to pronounce Zach's last name. I want to say LaPerriere, and that's probably the closest I can get. LaPerriere. Zach, I hope I'm getting it. So Zach sent us an email, and he said that he liked our conversation with Alastair Humphreys. So did I. He actually wants to hear more about books, more about books that we've highlighted in our print quarterly. I actually would love to talk more about books. We're just unclear on whether anybody else wants that.
Yeah.
Hey, Justin, do you keep track of how many books? Well, you have a little kid, so I don't know if you're reading anything.
No, I know what you're going to ask, and no, I don't. I saw Krista Langlois post all the books that she, sometime AJ contributor, now Hikai magazine senior editor, Krista Langlois. It's hard to say that name. Anyway,
Langlois.
She posted
Langlois.
Oh, that's right. C'est moi, Langlois. That's her social media handle. She posted her books that she read over the year, and I was just like, God, there's a lot of books. But
Does she have a count?
I mean, I don't think she said, like, I read these 15 books or 20 books or whatever it was, but she posted the covers of all of them, and I was impressed because she has a little kid too. So, yeah. No, I don't keep track. I would guess I probably read 10 books a year.
Okay.
What about you?
Well, last year was over 100.
Jesus God. Really?
I know.
Wow.
I had a good book year.
That's a lot of books, man. That's a book every 3.65 days. Is that right? Is my math? I don't know. I'm bad at math. Something like that. That's a lot of books. Wow.
Well, okay. Well, I mean, so.
Well, wait. Right. Can I count my kids' books?
No. Yeah, sure.
Then
how many times did you read Goodnight
75,000 books I read last year.
Again. Yeah. So, well, there's different ways to read books, right? Like there's the every word, every phrase. Yeah. But, as a writer and an editor, I mean, I know the tricks. And so I'm not going to call out any specific books, but, there are a lot of them where somebody will hang a concept around say a trip or an anecdote. So let's say they go canyoneering in, southern Mexico or something like that. And the book is about, I don't know, mole, right? Well, nothing on their trip, very little on their trip is going to have anything to do with the mole. Like your content about the mole is probably going to be 30% of the book and 70% of the book is padding, right? And it's not that there's not interesting stuff there. So, like if it's a nonfiction book, there's some books where I'm just like super immersive and it's, and I have probably like 15 nonfiction books that I started last year that I'm not done with because I'm going through them line by line and really like sinking my teeth. And then others where, it's like 2 days. And there's a book that we can talk a little bit later in the podcast about called 4,000 Weeks that I read it in, I don't know, like a day, And so, and then there's nonfiction books where, fiction books where it's like, there are like these vast sections where the author is trying to make like Atlas Shrugged. Like the whole like last third of Atlas Shrugged is Ayn Rand, like ranting, right? Like you don't need any of that to get the point of Atlas Shrugged. So, anyway, I did read a lot of books.
Do you have, I don't think we've ever actually talked about, I mean, surely you and I have talked about this. I'm not sure what your answer is going to be though, but do you have like a favorite outdoors writer or adventure writer or however you want to call our genre that we swim around in here?
I don't.
Because I mean, people would probably be happy to hear that. I mean, like what?
I don't.
Yeah.
And I don't have any real writerly heroes. I mean, I know I name check Peter Heller a lot just because I think Peter is the rare literary voice in that space, and he just pays so much attention to the rhythm, and to his words, and not everybody does. But I mean, Peter's not perfect. I mean, he's a great writer, but there's a lot of great writers, it's, I don't know. I'm curious if you approach things this way. I mean, I think about there are people who tell great stories who aren't great writers necessarily.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
There are people who really can piece together a nice sentence, but they maybe lose the plot on the bigger thing. And so I read different authors and different topics for different reasons, if that makes sense. Totally. I know for writer A, I shouldn't expect it to be super lyrical, but I want to hear what they have to say. I want to hear the depth of their thoughts on a certain thing.
Yeah. I mean, like I love Peter Heller's books. I mean, obviously we covered him on the first episode. I don't know that I would say he's like a brilliant writer though. I mean, he's a storyteller to me. Like he's just fantastic at that. I mean, he sets scenes pretty well. But like I would say Craig Childs is maybe my favorite, who writes in this space, even though he's writing nonfiction, because I think he just writes gorgeous sentences and so evocative of place. I mean, if you haven't read his stuff, I mean, Steven's a much more of an expert on Craig Childs than I am, but he's mostly writing about the Southwest. And like anytime I read anything from him, it's like I'm like, without even realizing I'm doing it, I'm packing up the truck to like drive out to the desert somewhere, just because it just situates you in those places so much. But he's someone that if he had a new book, I'd go buy it tomorrow. There's not a lot of people like that in our space, but he's one of them for sure.
Oh yeah, Craig is.
Yeah,
I think Craig is very good. Well, I mean, Craig's great at whatever he does, but I think he's especially good at sentence level.
Yeah. And
I think that Peter is you really see his flex, at a passage level. So, one sentence here or there might not stand out, and stop you in your tracks, but 2 or 3 paragraphs in the way that he pieced that rhythm together will.
Yeah,
does that make sense?
It does. And there are like 4 or 5 passages in the Dog Stars that like just almost reduce me to tears. So he definitely has those chops. But I think of him as almost more like a Stephen King type, where just so good at making these just page turners. And
right.
I wish there were more people like that in the outdoor space. I'd love to read more fiction that's situated in the outdoor space that isn't kind of schlocky. But it seems like often when I pick something up, I'm just like, it's just. It doesn't.
Well, there is actually, and we've so far. This is a listener feedback, and we've gotten like none so far. Sorry, folks, but like I said, we're going to wing it today.
We're serving Zach LaPerriere.
We're serving Zach.
Here you go, Zach
LaPerriere.
Maybe not related to Wayne LaPerriere. Hopefully not. Who knows? Anyway,
I don't know. I just read The Vaster Wilds, and. What's increasingly interesting to me, one, I found that books, with rare exception, like adventure memoir books, generally aren't that interesting. Sometimes they are.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're fantastic, and we do share about those we'll often put them in print in our recommended reading. I'm really interested in the people that are kind of adventure adjacent. I mean, this is one of the reasons why I love Diane Cook's The New Wilderness. It's not really an adventure book, but it's kind of a dystopia, climate fiction, but it takes place in an environment where people who are living off the land. So I find that when people it's more literary fiction that kind of comes into that area where it's not pure adventure, but it becomes very interesting to see how people address it. One book in particular I read last year, Death Valley, is not really an adventure book at all. It's more a book about kind of grief and struggling with illness and whatnot. It's a novel, but there's this passage where it's this woman who, I think she lives in LA. She goes to 29 Palms. She's sort of almost in like this escapist fugue, and she checks into a cheap motel, and then she ends up going hiking, and she gets lost. Like, it has almost no water, and the writing of how she deals with this character being lost in an area near Joshua Tree was fascinating to me. You know, even though the broader book didn't really speak to me, that one section, like how she chose to frame that was really amazing. Anyway, I want to move on to Zach's actual, the point that I have bolded out of his email here, which is, he says, more interviews with interesting folks would be my top request. To which I say, what, Justin and I aren't interesting enough for you? He says, and having both Steve and Justin on the interview adds a depth, as most podcasts I've listened to have only one interviewer. To which I would say, Zach, yes. +1. Absolutely. We have no intention of every week being these two bozos talking to each other the entire time, although we do like talking to each other, and I hope that comes through. So far, we've had 2 guests. Justin, they were...
Cassie Abel and Alistair Humphreys.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we have a lot more coming up. And actually, I read you my list of folks the other day, right? It was like 10 or 12 on the list.
Yeah.
And we have some scheduled. So upcoming, we are talking to snowboarding journalist Eric Blem. Eric wrote a piece about Craig Kelly in our current issue. He has a new book coming out about Craig. And he actually, in the story that he wrote specifically for us, he addressed a little bit about kind of why he wanted to write this book. Like, why did a guy who was so careful around snow safety, how did a guy who was so meticulous end up dying in an avalanche? That's what his book, The Darkest White, is about. So we're going to have him on. We're recording him next week, but we'll have him on right before or right as the book is available to buy. Then we have photographer and writer Matthias Fredrickson coming on. Matthias wrote a piece about chairlifts and the kind of the society, the small culture of chairlifts, that unique little dynamic that you get on these short rides. He is in Japan right now, absolutely killing it. And I'm kind of tired of him sending me photos of deep powder. And so that's going to be a fun. Matthias is high energy, and he's got so many stories, and I can't wait to talk about skiing with him. And then who else do we have coming up?
You mentioned, you were trying to get Caroline Gleich on to talk about her Senate candidacy, which is I was reading about that today a little bit because I wanted to write a little piece about it. But that would be fantastic. I can't imagine taking on something like that. But Caroline's she's super fun to talk to. She's super energetic. She knows a lot about, she's a ski expert. She's a mountaineering. She's done all kinds of cool, climbs. She's great. She's super fun. So I'm looking forward to talking to her. And Utah hasn't had a Democratic senator since the 70s. So, we'll see how that goes.
You looked it up? Or is that in her announcement?
No, I looked it up. I was curious. Yeah. So
I'm very curious to talk to Caroline. The first time I met her was on a ski testing trip at Snowbird, and of course she's just a ripping skier, and she's quite youthful, and she's petite, and so like she looks a lot. I've always felt like she looks younger than she is, and I don't know how old she was when I first met her, early 20s, and she just looked so young, and she was so like just bubbling over with ideas and things that she wanted to do around writing and activism. And God, this was like 15 or 20 years ago. I don't know how old she was, maybe 15 years ago. And so it's fascinating to see. And I can't wait to talk to her about like why. I can understand the whys, but I want to hear the whys from her. And she's lived her life very publicly on social media, and she's gotten a lot of blowback from people. And I don't really understand, because to me, she's just so sincere about what she does, and she's so trying to make the world a better place. And so I'm curious to talk to her about, like, really, you want more,
right?
You haven't gotten enough of that. But you know, it's clear that her commitment on trying to do good as she sees it, you know, trumps all of those things.
I'll be curious to see what the outdoor industry's response is. Like, will she get some backing? Will you know, brands rally around having, I mean, it'd be pretty incredible to have somebody like that. I have no idea what the odds are. I know Romney's seat is up, so that's got to be, she's not running against Romney. That's got to be great. But, man, I can't even fathom having someone like that actually in Senate, like someone like us, one of us, like in the Senate. I mean, that would be insane. So hopefully she gets some support. I mean, I know she works with Protect Our Winters quite a bit. And speaking of which, I think we also talked about trying to get Jeremy Jones on. Speaking of Protect Our Winters.
Yeah. I saw Jeremy a few weeks back at the Coast Film Festival here in Laguna and talked to him about coming on. He's on the list. Chad, who's the ED of Surfrider.
Chad Nelson's awesome. Yeah, he's great.
Yep, he's great. There's a lot of really great people. And plug for listener feedback. Who would you want us to have on? What do you want us to talk about? We're doing this because we love it. We're doing it because we want you to be stoked. And tell us who you want us to talk to. There's so many amazing people out in the adventure space. And we also, you know, we don't have the traditional conversations. I mean, we want to have conversations about kind of real adventure. I know typically people come on podcasts when they have something to plug. Yeah. That's fine. But we really want to, do what our motto, the deeper you get, says, which is go deeper. So, And what we're going to do next, we're going to talk about listener feedback on resolutions. We have a voice memo from a friend and regular listener, Colin True from the Rock Fight. Are we ready to tee that up? I believe we are. Here we go.
Like it. Yep.
Hey guys, it's Colin calling in from Rock Fight's worldwide headquarters. First time, long time over here. First, thanks for the shout out during your episode about REI and specialty shops. I'll be addressing some of that on a future episode of my podcast. But the real short of it is that we need both REI and independent retail. They're both important, but I've got a lot more to say on that topic. But regarding your episode about resolutions, I think resolutions are mostly bullshit. Change comes in tiny, repeatable increments that become a new routine. And I love setting big goals, but I loathe the notion of setting random expectations for myself based on how I'm feeling in January, because I know through experience I'm going to look back on a mostly unfulfilled list in 12 months' time. This is why things like signing up for a race or committing to something on the calendar matters, because a deadline always forces us into action more than resolving to change something. So keep up the great work. Also, don't let Justin forget that his secret resolution this year was to surf Mavericks for the first time. I really can't wait to see how that goes and hear all about it on a future episode. Peace!
Well, Mavericks.
Yeah.
You didn't mention that last time.
Funny. I didn't really want that getting out there. Boy, Colin. You know, that's kind of that was sort of your take too, right? Like you're more of a, you know, incremental change or change for the sake of change, not necessarily because of arbitrary calendar flip. Yeah.
Well, yes and no. I mean, I love the pause of the holidays where you know, that kind of dead zone between Christmas and New Year's, where it's just such a great time to think about where you are. I just don't think that this big flag waving, ta-da, here's my list, for most people, I just don't think they stick. And so I think that the only way real change, I agree with Colin, surprisingly, because we don't always. I just think that, I think making the change in those moments are where they're really going to actually have an effect.
I do think that. Well, he kind of contradicted himself a little bit. I mean, I don't know what the difference is necessarily between like signing up for a race and, I mean, you're still like, there's accountability there, right? Like you're signing up for a race, so you have to train We don't have to, but I mean, theoretically, you're at least going to run that distance, right? I mean, like, to me, that's kind of what the resolution thing is for. Like, I don't, maybe you're able to decide you're going to be different or approach things differently and just sort of do that in your brain, and that will reflect itself in your life. I have a hard time with that. So to me, writing it down and trying to hold yourself accountable isn't that different than signing up for a race. He's also like, he used to be kind of an endurance guy. I think he's self-motivated. A lot of people aren't, you know, like I don't know. I guess I kind of was before kids, but you know, like I don't know. I've been enjoying thinking about my resolutions since for I guess 9 days now since the first of the year. And, you know, I talked about some of mine, and I've already weaned out of at least one. So, like, you know, I haven't done karaoke, which I don't want to, but we mentioned that as like just something totally like where I've tried to be kind of random, you know, try to live life like Bill Murray would. But that I had an opportunity to, and I weaned right out of that. But I've surfed a new wave already. That was part of my resolution. And you know what? It was a terrible experience, but I'm glad I did. I'm glad I did. It's been a while since I've had. You get even like something like surfing, which is so different every time you paddle out. In a lot of ways, it's completely the same, but theoretically, it's different. The waves are always different. It's been a long time since I've been just like brutally skunked trying to surf a wave and had just a miserable experience. But it ended up being still kind of fun. I tried to surf this wave that's near. I surf a lot in Bolinas, which is just west of me. And there's a town called Stinson Beach, which is mostly famous for having some shark attacks 20 years ago. The waves there aren't good, but there's a small section of the beach I'd never really been to before. And so I thought, okay, I'll paddle across the channel from Bolinas over to Stinson Beach and surf this little wave. It looks like it could be kind of fun. And so I get over there and I realize, crap, I can't quite get to the wave from here. There's like a rock wall and some houses between me and it. So I decided to take a shortcut through what I think is just a small neighborhood. And it turns out it's like this multi-mile long, like uber exclusive place called the Seadrift Colony, which I'd heard of, but didn't realize that's where it was. And I'm just like stubbornly committed to like finding a beach access point. I'm just walking through this neighborhood, and there's people like looking at me. I'm like, you know, I got my wetsuit and my surfboard, and the security's driving by and kind of mean mugging me. I almost slipped through a couple like houses that were under construction, just thinking I could slide through here and get to the beach, but I ended up just like walking for miles, just stubbornly refusing to turn around. Ended up having to paddle all the way back because there's a lagoon on the other side of where I was walking. So I just jumped in and paddled all the way back once I finally realized I wasn't getting to the beach. Ended up paddling out right where I ended up at the beginning, and didn't really get any waves, but I learned a lot, you know. And but I did get to cross that resolution off. I've surfed North Stinson, which I've never surfed before. So,
well, kudos to you.
Thank you.
That's a much better story than, you rolled up to Cape St. Francis and nobody was out.
Found perfect waves.
So, yeah. Also, I was sort of making a joke. I actually do agree with Colin quite a bit. So I just like kind of feel like I should disagree with him because he's so fun to argue with.
Yeah, that's true.
When we did the resolution episode, I was talking to Joni afterward, and, you know, I was thinking, you kind of made the statement that you're basically happy. And I was thinking,
I said that?
You did.
Yeah. No, it's true. Yeah.
And I thought, you know, I'm actually pretty darn happy myself. Like, I like to be fitter. I'd like to lose weight. I'd like to spend more time doing more adventurous things. But the other side of that is that there's only so much time in a day. And I really like what I'm doing. I mean, I'm so excited about the work that we're doing with AJ and some of the changes that we have and with the podcast, and we're doing more gear reviews and things on video on YouTube. And then, you know, we launched Long Weekend Coffee last year, and we've not really marketed that at all to speak with. And I've got a strategy that I'm rolling out with that, and probably going to be doing a long weekend podcast here in a couple of months. It's going to be shorter, tighter, more about just fun, inspiring stuff as opposed to the long form conversations that we're having. So for me, that's like, there's not enough time in the day to work because I feel so driven by my passion for it.
I hadn't really thought about it until just now, but, you know, I do suppose that if you are in a place that you're stoked about, generally speaking, in life, unless you were just born there, right? Like born into that, you kind of made your resolutions along the way, right? Like you decided to do the things that have gotten you to where you are, and so maybe that speaks to Colin's approach in the sense of just making these iterative changes, and eventually you get to where you wanted to be. I mean, I could say that about myself for virtually all the things I like to do. I grew up without a father figure or older brother or anybody to kind of teach me anything I've learned how to do. I learned how to surf, ride bikes, all that sort of stuff on my own, fly fish, all that. It looked cool. I decided I wanted to do it, and I learned how to do it. I mean, those are resolutions, right? Like I didn't do them on New Year's, but I remember very specifically I was 12 years old and I decided, damn it, I'm going to learn how to surf. I'm going to be a surfer. This looks like the coolest thing in the world. And like we happened to move to the beach like the next summer. And I was able to do it, but I mean, that was just me walking to the beach by myself, so yeah, I mean, I think that maybe it's harder for people that have, are in a place where they're super stoked to like think about, making these big sweeping changes with life. So to me, it's more fun to just kind of tack on little things.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also think too, we're talking about this, after the rolling over into 24 and the idea of resolutions. I don't ever really stop thinking about how things can be better, or my adventure lists, the things that I want to do. This is sort of traditionally the time when we look at these things. And I think it's an ongoing process, right? I've actually seen this in a couple places lately, and I saw it from, there's a kind of a design oriented blog, called Swiss Miss. And, I just saw something on her feed the other day where it's just saying, thinking about the thing is not doing the thing, planning the thing is not doing the thing, strategizing the thing is not doing the, talking about the thing is not doing the thing. And, I think about all these, productivity tools that we have and all these other things where it feels like you're doing something in reality that you haven't. And, we, like even with this podcast, I mean, we are not Radio Lab. We are not This American Life. We're just doing kind of what we enjoy. And, I think that we just decided to go for it because we thought about it for years. Like, let's just do this, and we'll change the wheels, while we're in the air or the wing or whatever it is you change when you're in the air. So, I mean, I think it's more important to take action and move forward on things than to spend all day thinking about them and even drawing up lists. Just be the change you want to be and stop farting around.
Well, did you feel any urge after our podcast to come up with a list for this year?
No.
Probably not. Yeah.
No, I felt complete affirmation.
Mine wasn't that inspiring to you. You didn't hear mine and go, you know what? I got to come up with 5 of my own.
Well, I did get it. I did buy Tao of Bill Murray, which I've not read.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Awesome.
But
that's great.
I mean, I'm not a karaoke guy. I made a joke about novelty socks. I'm not a novelty sock kind of guy.
Yeah, that's true.
And weird. I think that, a lot of, when you're younger, you're kind of figuring out who you are. And sometimes that never stops with people, and there are, maybe you're iterating, but I mean, I am who I am, and I mean, even like when I'm shopping for clothes, I like, oh, that's really cool. That's not me though. I just know what feels right. And so I like, it sounds weird to say, I like myself. It's not that I have got a lot of things I can change, but like, the other thing, and this is where I want to touch on this book, 4,000 Weeks. I don't know if I will do its concept justice, but the thing about resolutions and the thing about lists and the thing about thinking about how we can be better, be better versions of ourselves, is it takes you out of the moment.
Yeah.
Right. And even the thinking about the thing is not doing the thing, that takes you out of the moment of doing the thing, whatever the thing is that you want to be doing. And so we talked about 4,000 Weeks. We talked about this book that Bridget, our marketing director, had just, I think, been given like 12 weeks, something. The idea is that you break your year into these 12 week blocks, and that you get more done in those 12 weeks than most people get done all year. So I picked up the book 4,000 Weeks, and I thought, well, it's called the time management book, but right away it blew me away. I realized this isn't a time management book. This is a book of philosophy.
Yeah,
because the core premise is that the sooner that we come to terms with what he calls our finitude, basically the fact that we don't live forever,
right?
The better off that we are. And he talks a lot about how deciding to do something, making a choice, gives meaning to that choice because you have chosen to not do all those other things that you could have done. So he basically makes this argument that if we lived forever, nothing would have meaning because things have meaning when we choose to do them.
Something and not something else. Yeah.
And not to do other things. Yeah, that makes sense. And one of the things that he talks about early on was about the perception of time now versus what people even 1,000 years ago, before clocks, basically, how people would have kind of lived in broader sweeps of time, and maybe they didn't his example was people working like in medieval times. So like a peasant working in a field, and they wouldn't be thinking, oh, I need to get more of this field cleared before the end of the day because that's on my list. They'd be like, they would do what they physically were able to do. And then at the end of the day, they would have their mead or, whatever, but they didn't have an optimization list for things because that wasn't how people thought. They wouldn't think about, quarters and quarterly reports and all this. They lived their lives. And so a lot of the book is about, kind of living in the moment and trying not to live outside time, if that makes sense. And if you've read 4,000 Weeks and you've memorized it and whatever, and I'm getting this wrong, then send us a message and we can address that. But it's I don't know. So here's a quote. He says afterwards, he goes, once time in life, here in quotes, once time and life have been separated in most people's minds, time became a thing that you used. And it's this shift that serves as the precondition for all the uniquely modern ways in which we struggle with time today. Once time is a resource to be used, you start to feel pressure, whether from external forces or from yourself, to use it well and to berate yourself when you feel you've wasted it.
I'm really glad that you brought this whole, you mentioned this book before we started talking. I never heard of it. I'm glad you brought this up, and I'm glad you read that passage specifically, because the whole time we've been sitting here talking about resolutions, it's been kind of gradually dawning on me that, I think a lot of this is just getting older, but at least when it relates to doing things I want to do in an adventure sort of, in terms of my adventure life, I think that my single biggest resolution is not trying to do too much. I talked about how I want to surf a new wave, but that's more, I'm just trying to inject some life back into something I've been doing for 30 years every day. But generally speaking, I get really anxious about not having done certain things, about not having been to certain places, and about not having had certain experiences in the outdoors. I don't know how to ski, which is, I have to be the only outdoors rider in the country that doesn't know how to ski, And for a long time, we talk about this every winter probably, where I think, okay, maybe this winter I'll learn, and I'm starting, and it produces real anxiety, but that I should, or that I'm missing out on something that everybody else is having a blast doing, and how can I call myself an adventure rider if I don't know how to ski, or and part of my just kind of work on myself as I've gotten older is just kind of trying to let that go, because there's not enough time in the world. I can't do everything, and I can't get everywhere, I'm never going to hike the PCT. I don't necessarily want to, but also there's still a nagging feeling I should be doing more and bigger things. But that's, I think part of my grander approach to being an outdoors person as I age is just kind of taking stock of what I can and what I can't do, and not being quite as freaked out when I can't do the things that I want to be able to do. So that's a hugely important lesson.
Right. Well, yeah. And what does it have to do with adventure? I think that ultimately we all we're looking for purpose in life, and we want to feel happy, I guess, whatever that, we want to feel content, whatever that means. And, adventure journal is an exploration of what it means to live with adventure in your life, basically. And I think that these things that we often chase are, we're looking for this. We're looking for this connection or whatever it may be. And talking about the things that may get in the way of that, I think are really important. Let me read a little bit more here, and then we'll come to a close on this section pretty soon here. So, all right, soon. This is when you sort of take up this idea of time in your life. Soon, your sense of self-worth gets completely bound up with how you're using time. It stops being merely the water in which you swim and turns into something you feel you need to dominate or control if you're to avoid feeling guilty, panicked, or overwhelmed. The fundamental problem is that this attitude toward time sets up a rigged game in which it's impossible ever to feel as though you are doing well enough. Instead of simply living our lives as they unfold in time, instead of just being time, you might say, it becomes difficult not to value each moment primarily according to its usefulness for some future goal. Superficially, this seems like a sensible way to live, but ultimately it backfires. It wrenches us out of the present, and it makes it all but impossible to experience deep time, that sense of timeless time, which depends on forgetting the abstract yardstick and plunging back into the vividness of reality instead.
Dude, I cannot wait to pick this up. I mean, that's fantastic.
Isn't that amazing? I'm like, oh my!
Well, it's like duh, but it's also duh, right? I mean, that's so obvious, but God, it's hard to break out.
But isn't everything kind of in this world duh? Like, aren't these lessons that we kind of have to relearn day in and day out? I was thinking about this this passage and all of this stuff in relation to going on adventures, which for me it's about exploring, which may be hiking, cycling, running, driving, and often when I'm going for a trail run, I'm thinking about zone 2, right? I'm thinking about like, what is my heart rate? Or maybe you're on Strava and you're thinking about PRs. And it's fine if you enjoy all that. I do enjoy all that. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, what is it that we are seeking out there? And I think about Colin Fletcher, who was the often called the father or grandfather, whatever, of backpacking. He wrote a lot. He traveled up and down. We talked about him in our podcast. We've covered him in the magazine. And he wrote when he was the first person to hike the Grand Canyon basically from end to end. Okay. I'm not going to quibble on the details, but he did long sections where he hiked naked. Like he took off everything, and there was awesome. Nobody out there. Like this was the 60s or 70s.
Yeah,
he was just out there, and probably no sunscreen, but whatever.
Don't need it.
But he was committed to stripping away everything that came between him and that ineffable connection that he was seeking with, I don't know what you want to call it, nature, God, the universe, the multiverse, whatever it is. And I think that that's ultimate, like whether it's you lose yourself in the observation that you're doing when you're drawing, or maybe it's like when you have your head down and you're spinning up a big hill and you're just focused on the rhythm. I don't know, but it's like those flow moments, right? Mm-hmm. And those, when you're in that zone, I think that's what we're really seeking. And kind of a lot of these other things, like even if it's, I have an hour to ride and then I had to get home and do whatever thing I have to do. Like all these things get in your way of living fully in that moment. And I suspect the more that we can live fully in the moment, the more fulfilling those moments will feel.
Absolutely. I mean, I was just thinking about, I've never hiked the Grand Canyon naked, but I mean, that's why you go skinny dipping, right? Like that's even just that, like it doesn't have to be, you don't have to hike rim to rim naked to experience that sort of thing. I mean, just that just like saying yes to the moment, that connection with everything around you, that shedding of things that always seem so important, but in reality really aren't. I mean, that's why, I mean, that's why we go out there. That's why we do it. It really is.
Yeah. Another thing that the book touches on, and then I'll wrap it, I promise, is that one of the curses of the internet and social media is that it offers the potential for boundless opportunity of things to do. And this idea of YOLO and, you coming back to your idea of you don't think that you're a fully faceted outdoor person if you don't alpine ski. If you see alpine skiing in Instagram, that probably fuels that as opposed to if you don't. Right. And so if you don't have as much exposure to these things, the more that you do have exposure to all these other things, the less contented you probably will be with what you do have and with who you currently are.
Well, I mean, basically stay tuned after the break as we dive more into how AJ is becoming a Buddhist collective, basically. Because, I mean, the more we talk about this sort of thing, the more I'm starting to maybe I should research my local monastery. I mean, it seems what it's all about, just being in the moment, not worrying about what you can't control, and just being happy with what you have. I mean, that's it. I think so.
Although if we were to do that, our printed quarterly would basically just be blank pages and a little recording of somebody going home.
Yeah, I'm sure there'd be a market for it. I mean, they have Tricycle Magazine's a Buddhist magazine, right? We should pick one up and see what they're talking about.
I think so.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, that seems like a good point to come to a break. We will be right back, and we won't be talking anymore about resolutions. We will be on to something new. You love adventure, we love adventure, and that is why we created Adventure Journal in print. It is the gift that we've made for ourselves and for our friends and hopefully for you that is analog, that gets away from screens, that gives you some of the most interesting, deepest, and thoughtful stories from some of the best writers and photographers working in the outdoor space. We do 4 a year. You get free shipping and a deep discount. It's $60 to have this absolutely beautiful, no batteries necessary celebration of adventure in your mailbox. Get it at adventure-journal.com. I am drinking, it's gotten cold now because we're halfway through the show. I am drinking Long Weekend Coffee. We launched Long Weekend Coffee earlier this year to bring you and us blends that are not fussy, that will take any kind of brew method that we like, whether it's at home, in a cabin, on the tailgate of a truck, doesn't matter. We have 4 blends. We have dark, medium, espresso roast, and a decaf. I think they're pretty amazing. I guarantee you will like them. Check us out at longweekend.coffee. Welcome back to the Adventure Journal podcast. I'm Stephen Casimiro here with Justin Hausman, and we have put a pin in resolutions and will not talk about them for at least another year. Agreed?
Well, I don't know. I'm, you know what? No, I don't agree, because if I nail all 5 of mine, I'm going to talk about it.
Okay, mute that guy. We're not talking about him. Okay, so Stephen Mullaney from somewhere on the East Coast said, in reference to the episode that we did on the UBCO electric motorcycle, he said, I have used motorcycles over the years to reach remote areas for surfing, climbing, and backcountry travel. I was even pulled over in New England once, riding in almost a foot of snow, trying to get to college for my morning shift in the cafeteria. Cops thought I was crazy. Good to see the electric market is being creative and growing. Amen to that, Stephen. I am with you 100%. I cannot wait to see. I think we're in a good place now. I can't wait to see where we are e-bike and e-motorcycle wise in 5 years from now. So next we are going to tackle some feedback from our episode about REI versus indie outdoor retailers.
So this was 2 episodes back, yeah? Yeah, previous to
I believe
resolutions. So. Yeah. So TJ3272, be curious what TJ's actual name is. But he's commented before, but he wanted to talk about the REI episode. He says, I'm in the mountains, which is a retail wasteland, as it should be, frankly, in the mountains. But used to live pretty close to an REI. I'd go in for the vibe. I'd buy some gas, maybe a hard copy map, and have bought a few pairs of shoes because of their killer return policy. But good gear is expensive, and if you're a bang for the buck person, the 10% member savings just doesn't cut it. If you can't find better deals online after doing your research and you don't give a shit about last year's color, then you're not doing it right. He says a little bit more, but I thought that was interesting. I'm not really sure how much we actually touched on just the pure online shopping relationship to the sort of REI versus independent retailer thing, but we probably should have if we didn't. And I don't want to I don't know how I feel about that comment because he's not wrong. I mean, from a purely smart financial perspective, I mean, it makes all the sense in the world to try to find the cheapest thing you can online. I mean, I used to do that all the time. There was a I feel like maybe in the early 2000s, this became kind of a big thing where you could go and buy. I used to get wetsuits really cheap from, I forget what they're called, but this little warehouse thing in San Luis Obispo that just gathered last year's wetsuits and sold them for way cheaper than any surf shops could. And this was back when it was becoming like a huge issue where people would go into stores and try stuff on and then leave and go buy it online. That was like we were kind of first grappling with this like as like a community. And I kind of feel bad. Sesh Day, that's what the website was called, Sesh Day. I kind of feel bad about that now. I mean, I like how many wetsuits did I buy that I could have bought for like $30 more at the local surf shop, and could I don't know. I just don't know how I feel about it. I mean, I buy stuff on Amazon sometimes. I don't love doing it, that I could buy locally, but I don't know. I just feel like there's something there to be wrestled with where, yeah, you're not wrong. You could definitely get last year's stuff cheaper online if you don't care about the color, yada, yada, yada. But I just, boy, that doesn't feel right to me doing that. I just feel like we do have a responsibility to support, whether it's REI or your local mom and pop personally.
Do we? I mean, I don't want to revisit, the discussion we had before, but I mean, if they're giving us what we want, what we need, whatever that may be, whether it's prices or selection or service or community, then we're going to feel naturally like we want to patronize them, sure. Right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I think it's...
Well, I think you can put a dollar value, maybe not an actual firm one, but I do think that, like, I've thought about this enough, and I've come to the conclusion that I'm willing to pay a bit more to have places that I like still exist. So yeah, maybe, and it's not entirely like my local surf shop can't compete with some online retailer that has one employee, like they just can't. Right. So, it's, I guess the way I think about it is, I kind of go down the road of like, okay, if this just continues and spirals, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. At a certain point, we're all just living our lives online and buying things online. I mean, maybe that's not bad. I don't know. But to me, that sounds horrific. And so I just don't want to go down that road anymore. I'm in a place where I can afford not to, it'd be different if I was a college kid and didn't have a choice, and $20 was a big deal to me. But I'm not saying I'm rich, but I mean, I factor that in, it's like, okay, I don't mind paying a bit extra. So that's,
I still think it's interesting how we project onto retailers what we want to project. And I'm kind of curious if you could do some sort of academic study about the delta between what you say about how you feel about outdoor retailers versus how you spend your money.
Right.
Because I wonder, even in all this, like we haven't mentioned, that big company that is named after a river, like how many people are, say REI, but actually because they want it Prime and don't pay for shipping, just buy it from Amazon. I don't know. It's a pretty fascinating thing. One of the things that we talked about in that episode was we talked a lot about community and the need for like a cultural gathering place and for an independent outdoor retailer to be connected to its community and serving its community in unique ways. And we got an email from Jason Miller at Three Rivers Outdoor, which is an independent shop. Jason said, I run an independent outdoor specialty shop in Pittsburgh, PA. I was recommended to your podcast comparing REI to independent shops, and both loved and appreciated the discussion right at the very end. The way in which you both describe the reasons for supporting local shops is fantastic, and I'd love to use it as a way to promote that message to our community. And I think what he's talking about is this kind of interdependent relationship on people with their local shop and their local shop with the local people, and being really attuned to it. And I think that when you have that, then I don't think you care about that extra $30. Maybe it is ultimately a pure financial decision, and you buy goo or a water bottle or something like that from your shop because you got to get your $30 off the wetsuit or whatever. Mm-hmm. So I think that, I think I was thinking about this through the lens of like being a business owner, making a product, which is a printed quarterly. And, I have to communicate to people what the benefit of that is, but that's on me. Right. And so I do think it is still, we do have responsibilities to support the things that we love and to sometimes make those hard decisions, but it is also on the retailers to give us a reason to do that. That's true.
I guess the way I think about it isn't even so much like, even if I didn't have a local shop that I cared about, I still think I might go out of my, like maybe I don't even like them. I still might go out of my way to buy something from them versus online. I almost think of it as it's like a bulwark against just brick and mortar going away, period. You got almost like it's almost as like taking the long way home, right? Like I could drive from here to the next town up. I could either go on Highway 101, get there about 10 minutes faster, or I can go the back way through the redwoods on a twisty little road. It's way more efficient to go on 101, saves me gas, all that, but I have a better experience and enjoy myself more on the other road. And I kind of think of it that way a little bit, that I don't think we always need to do something in the most efficient means possible, even if that includes financially. Like there's other aspects to that sort of thing. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I think absolutely. I think you're right. And one of the things is I don't really want to buy anything. I mean, I have what I need. Oh, yeah. And I think about the shops that I really enjoy going into. I mean, last time I was in Outer Sunset and SF and went into Mollusk, I looked around to see if there's any, clothes that I could only get from them, that maybe there was a hole in my wardrobe and there just wasn't, and in our town, down here in South Orange County, Hobie surf shop is a nice little chain. They've got really great stuff. I just don't need any more stuff. We kind of shop there for birthday presents, maybe around the holidays, but if they have events, and I can go support events, then I'm all about that. That's the thing about events is that they give you a way to stay connected to that shop when you really maybe aren't constantly, regularly, hopefully not buying things.
Mm-hmm. Well, we got a bunch of comments on the Instagram post that we did about that episode, where people were just giving shout outs to the places they love. So clearly people do have a big, a close relationship with stores for one reason or another. I wanted to read a few of them if you don't mind.
I would love it.
So, God, Instagram handles are tough, but Kun Herrig B says shout out to Alpenglow Sports and all of their community focused work in Tahoe City. I've been to Alpenglow. They're fantastic. People love them.
They are legendary.
Oscar Juarez says Grotto Zero is based in Patagonia, Chile, and that's an awesome local store. So that's a little Southern Hemisphere love. We got Sunflower Outdoor and Bike Shop is an all-timer. I don't know where they are. That was from Nick Sales. Albin Osaki says every time I'm in the Pacific Northwest, I need to make a stop at Backcountry Essentials. I don't know where they are either. John McGruber says all he did was just tag his favorite place, which is in Sioux Falls. Great outdoor store, and it just goes on. I love that. People just listen to the store and they just drop their favorite store into the comments. That just shows you right there that no one. I don't see a single one here that says like www.outdoorgoodscheap.com.
No, absolutely not. Fieldtheory.us, Ride Roslyn, Angry Catfish.
How many of these have you heard of besides Alpenglow?
Angry Catfish.
That's a great name.
Hang on, I'm just looking at our feed here. Alpenglow is one of the top retailers in the country. Let's see, Spoken Sport Bikes, don't know them. Nomad Adventures, San Diego County, Joshua Tree, I certainly know them.
I know them, yeah.
I've been in their shops many times. A lot of them I know, but there's a bunch of new ones. And we got a little bit of that on Facebook too. And a little bit more just sort of general commentary. So Megan Ray Landrum said, many corporations are now just buying up successful local shops to try and corner the market. with varying degrees of success. When the local outfits can't keep up, they die. And when they can compete, they get bought out. Many places only have local options because the population there is so diehard about supporting small business. And then Mike Trimble responded and said, I don't think we have to pit one against the other. We're just blessed to have great options.
I mean, I'm glad he said that because I hope it didn't come across that we were like crapping on REI. And we both talked about how we love going in there.
No, I think that we,
totally
we picked up I liken this to picking up a rock at the beach and, turning it over and looking at it from as many sides as you can. Mm-hmm. There are wonderful things about REI and there are wonderful things about independent retailers. I don't think anybody's saying either or. I mean, there's certainly, probably cynicism about big boxes, but it serves a role.
I like this one from Pete Sween. I remember the original Marmot store in San Jose, 2-story brick building that just oozed mountaineering culture. I bought my first pair of big dogs there. I think they had a total of 5 in stock, and my wife laughed at me because they were so baggy. I mean, that's great. He remembers buying a pair of, I'm guessing those are pants, at a place. I mean, how long ago was that? Decades ago? I mean, that's fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Brian Gregan said, as far as my cycling needs go, I'll gladly pay slightly more to support the LBS. Mm-hmm. I shop REI for more costly items like my Thule box or new tent because of the dividend. All other paddling gear, my money gets spent locally. And then Amy, how do you say that, do you think? Quinnell?
Sure.
We'll say that. Hope we got it, Amy. I'd love to give a shout out. Problem is there are no mom and pop shops near me. I'm just grateful to have an REI nearby. Too many stores these days are closing due to retail theft.
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing. I'm sure REI is struggling with that too.
I just saw something. I probably shouldn't bring it up because I don't have it in front of me, but a study about Walmarts and the impact of Walmarts. And I just think about this from the big box perspective. And it was a look at the long-term impact of Walmarts on rural communities. And over time, and I can't remember the numbers, but the big picture, well, one of the numbers was that the price of groceries only goes down by like 3%. But then like all the other metrics turn negative. Like the number of mom and pop stores goes down, the impact on people's budgets goes up. So Walmart has this kind of initial relatively small positive impact on pricing, but overall ends up like being more hurtful for communities. And I'm sure you could Google or DuckDuckGo that. So it would be interesting to see like the environmental impact of a big box like REI versus a local on a place. And when we were talking about guests, I mean, one of the people that I definitely want to have on, in fact, I'll actually reach out to him today, is Wes Allen from Sunlight Sports, who is a very vocal, independent outdoor retailer and been in the industry for a long time and super knowledgeable. I think it would be really helpful to have somebody like Wes on to talk about this. And then I don't know if we could get anybody from REI, but it would be interesting to have REI and an independent shop owner at the same time talking about these issues.
I mean, it's entirely possible that REI acts as sort of a rising tide lifts all boats thing in a local area. I mean, they're so good at bringing in newcomers to the outdoor world that that seems like that would be helpful to local communities. Get more people excited about it, and they maybe find an independent store. So I wouldn't be surprised if they don't really adhere to that Walmart stat. But I'm just flying by the seat of my pants. I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that ultimately we crave entities that are enduring and that are perceived as authentic and committed and cool. And
sounds like you're describing Adventure Journal's printed quarterly right now.
Nice plug. Thank you. I'm thinking about shops. I mean, I'm really thinking about the role, a small shop can play. And I just don't think I think having expectations that REI is going to play that role are just misplaced expectations. But I do hunger for great shops, for shops that really give you kind of a sense of, yeah, these guys have something really special. And even using that word special, I mean, they are tend to be more rare. It's hard to catch lightning in a bottle. So,
well, I feel like we should also probably there are a lot of people that kind of poured one out for Midwest Mountaineering in Minneapolis, both on Facebook and on Instagram. So I think I went there when I went to Minneapolis a few years back to be a talking head in the documentary about the Ralph Plaisted expedition that I was in a few years back. I'm pretty sure that's where I went. And if that was indeed the place, it was incredible. This really, really neat old brick building it was huge with multiple stories and rentals and everything you could possibly imagine. And I'm sad to say, I think that probably was the store that closed, but man, that was cool.
Yeah.
So, but we see you, we hear you, people that like that spot.
Yeah. Well, I'll close with a plug. If, do think about how you spend your money and what your values are. Do think about how you spend your time. I'd be curious if other people pick up 4,000 Weeks and their take on it. I think, anything that helps us to, you talking about sleepwalking when we were talking about the resolution things, like breaking out of that, anything that we can shake things up on a regular basis because we just get so kind of stuck in our ways. And one way that we are not stuck in our ways, we are working on the first issue of Adventure Journal for 2024. And we are making some changes, and we are dropping a few departments. We are introducing 5 new ones. We are going to have a new color palette. Today, Joni and I were working on new cover ideas, new logo ideas. It's not settled out yet, but we do have all the stories assigned. Most of them are in. We're already working on them. Man, I'm really excited about it. You are going to find more energy, more diversity, more people, more faces, more fun. I think it's going to be a banger year for AJ in print, and you can get it by subscribing at adventure-journal.com. It is $60 a year. Our single copy price is $20, and if you buy them on their own, you got to pay shipping. But if you subscribe, you get all 4 for $15 each, and that includes shipping. These are to U.S. addresses, of course. I hope that you love what we're doing here. If you are enjoying the podcast, I guarantee you will love it in print. Follow us, DM, let us know, keep in touch, like, rate, record, review. We want to hear it all. Thank you so much for your most valuable thing, which is your time. Catch you next time.